Thank you. We're calling a meeting to order, and the first item on the agenda is request for bill introductions. Senator Alicia Strom. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. I have a companion bill today for House Bill 2327. The RS number is 1360. The purpose of this bill is to protect the quality of life of residents and patients in county-owned facilities by securing their right to choose, to have visitors, and to waive restrictions imposed to control transmission or prevention of an infectious disease.
Thank you. Committee, is there any questions? Seeing none, is there no objection to having this bill introduced? Seeing none, bill will be introduced. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be off to committee.
Thank you. Senator Ware.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a bill to introduce. The RS number is 1405. It's a bill for proposed changes to the Kansas Emergency Management Act.
Are there any questions? Is there any objection to introducing this bill? Seeing none, bill will be introduced. Senator Faust-Godot.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's a bill that's still being drafted, actually, and the reviser is Adam Siebers, and he will provide the RS number later today if he hasn't already. And members, what the bill does, it eliminates sales tax on food.
Are there any questions concerning this bill introduction? Is there any objection to this bill introduction? And we will get that RS number this afternoon if we don't have it already.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, also it's in collaboration with Senator Renee Erickson. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any objection to introducing this bill? Seeing none, bill will be introduced. Thank you very much. We move on to our hearing today. We have 4 bills on schedule. Senate Bill 252, which is creating a fulfillment house licensee to authorize storage and shipping services provided to the winery special order shipping licenses. Jason, could we have a staff briefing on the bill?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Senate Bill 252 would authorize the issuance of a fulfillment house license for shipping alcoholic liquor to consumers in Kansas. This new section is similar to what we currently have in statute in KSA 41-350. That's the special order shipping license that allows the licensee to ship wine up to 12 standard cases of wine into Kansas directly to a consumer in Kansas. The fulfillment house license basically allows for a warehousing packaging entity to take that shipment and then fulfill the order and ship the alcohol onto the end consumer on behalf of the special order shipping license. The activities of the fulfillment house under the license are all done to provide services to the holder of a special order shipping license that is shipping wine into Kansas directly to the consumer. The fee is a biennial fee of $100, which is the same as is imposed for a special order shipping license. It would be limited to warehousing, packaging, and shipping of wine produced and belonging to a special order shipping licensee. They would be required to provide the location of all facilities that would be covered by the fulfillment house license from which wine would be shipped. There's also requirements that all shipments be properly labeled, including the statement that the signature of a person age 21 or older required for delivery be on the package. And then the licensee would be required to maintain all records of shipments for at least 3 years and submit those records monthly to the director. There is a civil penalty of up to $100 for failure to comply with that reporting requirement. Finally, The bill amends the standard definition section under the Liquor Control Act to add a definition of fulfillment house, simply describing the activities of these licensees. The bill will go into effect on July 1st of this year if enacted, and I'd be happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions for Jason on the bill? Seeing none, first proponent would be Mr. Tuck Duncan, General Counsel for Kansas Wine and Spirits Host Association. Good morning.
Chairman, good morning. I appreciate hearing from the committee. I don't want the people on the YouTube to hear what I have to say, do I? No. Anyway, so Kansas has direct-to-consumer wine shipping. We've had it 15, 20 years. Several years ago, because of the inadequacy of the ability to know who was lawfully paying tax and not, the legislature enacted a Common Carrier Reporting Act. So basically, UPS and FedEx, who do 99.9% of that shipping, make a monthly report electronically to the Director of the Alcoholic Beverage Control. There were 198,000 and 556 such shipments in fiscal year 2020. You may recall the director testified about those shipments when she came in and talked to you. This is 1 month. 1 month. All right, this is, I cooked the books. This is December of 2019 during Christmas, but I thought the bigger the sample, the more accurate the percentages. All right, so what happens? Duncan Winery makes 10, 15 cases a year. I don't have a big shipping department, so I go to a fulfillment house and I drop off all of my product, and then Senator Ware calls the winery and says, I want Duncan's Chateau de Pouf Pouf. And they tell the fulfillment folks, and they box up 3 or 4 bottles and send her the Chateau de Pouf Pouf, which is superb, by the way, because I'm the winemaker. And anyway, nonetheless, so what's happened? Well, okay, so the green is FedEx, the blue is UPS. In here, there were 10,092 FedEx shipments into Kansas in December 2019. Of which 6,834 went through a fulfillment house, 68%. Now, why is that a problem? It's a problem because we don't know who they're shipping for. We don't, when they send the product into Kansas, the report that the ABC gets says Wine Direct or Duncan Fulfillment Center. It doesn't say that it's one of the 798, almost 800 wineries that do have special order shipping permits and pay the fee and remit the taxes annually. So what this bill does very simply is it gets the fulfillment house to get a license. They're going to report that they shipped for XYZ winery, Duncan Winery, and then they're going to have the tracking number, and the ABC is going to compare the tracking number on the FedEx report with the tracking number on the fulfillment house report, and they're going to know whether or not those 68% folks are lawfully shipping and, more importantly, paying the tax. And that's what this is all about. Now, I've worked with the director. I've worked with the Wine Institute. There is, and yes, this bill is also working its way through the House. In the House, we had to make some amendments after we got together and figured out how this thing was really going to work, because the way the bill's drafted, a fulfillment house would get 1 license for all their locations. Well, it would cost the ABC almost $40,000 to reprogram their computers to do it. So everybody's interested in this bill has agreed it ought to be 1 license for 1 location. So instead of a $100 fee, since some of these folks have multiple locations, it would be a $50 fee. There's a technical amendment in here the ABC needs with regard to when the license is the effective date of the license. And finally, we are removing from the label, the way the bill's written now, the name of the special order shipper, because the fulfillment houses can't really put 2 return people on the same label, but we're still getting the information we need. So I think we all consider these to be basically technical sorts of amendments, and at such point in time you work the bill, and I believe the director will chime in. Is she on? Yeah, there she is. I think she and Larry Ann will concur that these are necessary. And with that, I'll sit down and be quiet, which is unusual for me.
We may want to ask you some questions.
Oh, please don't.
Thank you.
But okay.
Committee, are there any questions? Yes, Senator Hildebrand. Yes, you may.
Tuck, before you hand those out,
Yep.
I just have a quick question. I'm not a wine connoisseur, but I was just curious.
We can cure that.
Can you pick up that grape for your poof poof at the Walmart or grocery store, or where do we get that grape to make that?
You get that at your independently owned Kansas retail liquor store from somebody who belongs to Amy's Association. God bless her.
Tuck, you can just give those to Connie and we'll
I'll
get
give
those
those to
out.
Connie.
Thank you. Yes, Senator Faust-Cadeau.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tuck, just, even though you didn't have your props with you this time, okay. Well, you did an excellent job. Quick question. So right now, without this legislation, are you saying that some people are making payment and some people aren't?
I'm saying that probably 50% of the shipments into the state of Kansas is my estimate, mine alone, but having looked through literally 100,000 of these things on the Excel spreadsheet, it would not be an exaggeration to say probably 50% of the shipments into Kansas are not paying the taxes that the other 50%. The 50% that are Larry Ann's members from the Wine Institute. The ones that aren't are using the fulfillment houses as a shield by which to report, get a permit, and pay the tax. So yes, we think there's serious problems.
Mr. Chairman, you said the what houses?
Fulfillment house. That's what we're licensed. The fulfillment house is the third-party intermediary who receives the product from the winery and ships it to me, the consumer. Okay?
Any further questions? Thank you very much. Our next proponent, Larry Ann Brown of the Wine Institute.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I'm Larry Ann Brown. I'm here today on behalf of the Wine Institute. Senator Hildebrand, I think the correct answer is the grapes would probably come from either my California wineries or some of our fantastic wineries in Kansas. Wine Institute is a trade association made up of approximately 1,000 California wineries and associated businesses. We thank you for the opportunity to provide comments in support of Senate Bill 252. As Tuck mentioned, fulfillment houses have become a very important part of the wine business and to the wine business, not just for the California wineries, but wineries across the country. They offer warehousing abilities for the wineries, such that when the winery's customers orders wine for direct shipment, the winery tells the fulfillment house what wine to package, which they do with the proper labeling, for the common carrier to pick up for delivery to the customer. Most wineries, many wineries, including the California wineries, do need fulfillment houses for the simple reason they simply don't have enough space to store all the wine. Wineries make the wine, then the fulfillment houses store the wine. Since fulfillment houses can also package and ship the wine on behalf of the winery, they become an important part of the delivery process, just as those common carriers that Tuck mentioned who deliver the wine. Wine Institute understands and supports the goal of ensuring that entities are following the Kansas law and paying the proper taxes to the Kansas Department of Revenue. The bill before you with Tuck's amendments provide a reasonable solution, and with those amendments that are offered that will be approved, we hope, by Mr. Duncan, the Wine Institute does support Senate Bill 252, and we respectfully ask that you all approve those amendments, and with approval of those amendments, we will support the bill.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Seeing none, we appreciate your testimony. Next on the proponents would be Amy Campbell, the Executive Director of Kansas Association of Beverage Retailers. Good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Amy Campbell. I work for the Kansas Association of Beverage Retailers. We are the statewide association representing the independently owned liquor stores. Our association has been in existence since the repeal of Prohibition in Kansas in 1949. This bill, many of you, if you get on social media, if you order things through the mail, you're getting all sorts of ads from people who are trying to ship you wine products. And one of the things that this bill will help to do is to identify those that are actually wineries and maybe those who are not. Not everyone who advertises items to you is licensed in any state, and that is a big issue. You know, we have issues related to public safety in who these items are delivered to. They need to be over the age of 21. And we also have issues in the making and delivery of a product that has been overseen by some regulatory agency somewhere to know that the ingredients and the product is to drink. So those two things are very important to us. If you go back to the legislative briefing by the director of the Division of Alcoholic Beverage Control, she talks about these issues in that overview. And we really appreciate the fact that the agency has taken a look into this issue because my retailers have been concerned about this for a number of years. Our retailers support reasonable business-friendly regulation of the sale of spirits, wine, and beer to the public, and we ask that our laws require a fair and even playing field and to protect public health and safety. We do not expect that this bill will solve all of the problems or stop all illegal shipments, but we urge you to provide the statutes that are needed in order to hold industry members accountable where possible. This is a key tool to assist the enforcement by adding the fulfillment houses to our regulatory system, and the reporting requirements are minimal, but should help to bring more shippers into compliance by licensing them and collecting the taxes that are due. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Is there any questions? Yes, Senator Falscadell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Amy, hi. So the taxes, the payment that's collected, where exactly does that go to? How is it divvied up? Does it
Taxes
just go?
that are collected go to the state general fund.
Okay, but then how does your industry benefit?
So, really one of the issues here is that someone who's shipping into Kansas is only going to pay the tax for the retail sale to a customer. A manufacturer that's making wine in the state of Kansas is paying multiple levels of taxes as it comes through the system, and you all have heard that information before. There's a tax at the manufacturer level, there's a gallonage tax at the wholesale level, there is an enforcement tax of 8% that's paid when something is sold by the liquor store, and then there is another 10% tax when it's sold at the restaurant or bar level. So these individuals who are shipping into the state of Kansas are just paying one tax. They would be paying, I believe, a manufacturer's tax at the federal level, depending on where they are and what their licensing structure is.
Are there any further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We also have a neutral testimony today from Director Debbie Beavers of the Alcohol Beverage Control Division. Debbie, are you on?
I am. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. We are neutral on this bill. As Tuck mentioned earlier, and Amy also referred to my annual briefing where I reported that 71% of the wine orders in this limited investigation we did sold and shipped to Kansas residents, which is lawful if you have the special order shipping license. And also 95% of the spirits orders and 100% of the beer orders were also sold and shipped to Kansas residents. And both of those are both unlawful. We know this is a very big problem, unlawful shipments. And by requiring the fulfillment house to report electronically, we will be able to match reports, the shipments of wine by the fulfillment house and the common carrier. Senate Bill 258 was also introduced requiring the electronic quarterly reporting by the special order shipper, giving us a further match to identify those shipments that are unlawful. There is not a week that goes by that we don't receive one complaint or more on shipments to Kansas consumers and advertisements, and we do investigate 100% of those complaints that we receive. My testimony has a couple of technical things that are addressed in the bill in the amendment that Tuck referred to earlier, so I won't go over those for you, but I'll be happy to stand for any questions that you may have at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you, Directors. Any questions? Yes, Senator Dietrich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is for the company. Did you say that now with the amendments, the cost of the reprogramming will go from 56,000 to 18,000? Did I understand that correctly? Or am I reading that correctly?
With the amendments that Tuck had referred to, there will be no costs incurred.
None? Oh, even better. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Thank you for being here today, and I will see you a little bit later in the meeting. Okay, that closes the hearing on Senate Bill 252, and we're going to open the hearing on Senate Bill 253, allowing a farm winery licensee to transfer and receive bulk wine and product fortified wine. And we'll have a staff briefing by Jason. If you would, Jason.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Senate Bill 253 makes some amendments in the Kansas Liquor Control Act with respect to farm winery licensees and packaging and warehouse facility permit holders. The first amendments you will see on page 2 of the bill are in KSA 41-308A. This is a statute that authorizes farm wineries conduct under that license. You'll see there are 4 new actions that a farm winery licensee could undertake under Senate Bill 253. These all deal with transferring and receiving wine in bulk containers and other alcoholic spirits in bulk containers for the production of wine by these wineries. These are all activities that are currently permitted under federal law for entities that hold a TTB permit. That's a Federal Tax and Trade Bureau permit. So these are all activities that a winery holding the TTB permit currently could already do. These is just establishing it under state law. The next amendment I will point out is on page 3 that allows farm wineries to import wine from outside of the state for use in the production of wine by the winery and would report such imports to the director. There is a prohibition added to the farm winery statute on page 4 of the bill to prohibit transfers of wine in bulk to the premises of a brewery. And then the other amendment in Senate Bill 253 is to the packaging and warehousing facility permit holder. This allows the receipt and transfer of alcoholic liquor and cereal malt beverage in bulk. The amendment is at the bottom of page 4, top of page 5, to allow the receipt and transfer of liquor and cereal malt beverage for purposes of packaging in cans and bottles by those permit holders. The bill will go into effect on July 1st of this year if enacted, and I will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you Jason, for that report. Are there any questions? Seeing none, we will open our hearing for the proponents. Mr. Whitney Damon of the Kansas Grape Growers and Winemakers Association. Morning, Whitney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Again, Whitney Dameron on behalf of the Kansas Grape Growers and Winemakers Association. The organization was created in 1987 and has 76 members and represents essentially the farm winery industry in Kansas, along with Phil Bradley, who represents another group of people similarly situated. During the pandemic period of time, there were some changes made in the way alcohol products were allowed to be sold. We all recall the curbside delivery or the ability to pick up product curbside at restaurants and so forth. Also during that time, Department of Revenue reviewed the farm winery handbook and I think clarified some matters that my members at least disagreed with the way they were clarified. So what they felt was that what they were allowed to do in moving product back and forth between a distiller or from a winery to another winery, for example, was allowed through their federal license. ABC took the position it was not, because if it's not expressly allowed, it is disallowed under Kansas law. So the director brought those matters to our attention after some of our members had looked at the new revised farm winery handbook. said, okay, let's have a conversation with the farm wineries, let's figure this out, let's take a look at these areas of law, and if we need to clarify them in statute, let's do that. The director then facilitated a rather sizable Zoom meeting, to her credit. I don't know how many people were on that, but a lot. And we isolated the issues that we felt needed to be clarified. My client retained the services of internationally famous attorney who happens to live right here in Topeka, Kansas. We are so fortunate. And so Mr. Tuck Duncan was retained to work with kind of the directives that ABC laid out and work with my client and Mr. Bradley's client as well, and put together essentially the bill that you have before you. And that is what I had requested for introduction earlier this year. Somewhere between the time of introduction and its transmittal to the basement of the State House and before it came back before the Senate, we were approached by Mr. Federico and his client, who had an issue they needed to deal with in regard to licensing of a canning operation in Manhattan. Lo and behold, that same world-renowned liquor attorney right here in Topeka was available to consult with them and put together some language that was eventually incorporated into this bill prior to it being read in on the Senate floor. So that's why the bill has some additional language to that. It's very complimentary of what my client wants and is supportive of the entire bill. The wine industry in Kansas does want additional bottling and canning facilities in our state, just because every winery can't afford to do that. And so this will be a unique opportunity for some of those who want to see a product utilize their services. So with that, I'm going to stand down. I'm happy to respond to questions. I know, I believe Mr. Federico is going to testify, and then if you have questions on how the bill was put together and what it does, you might call upon that world-famous attorney sitting right here in this very room today. But happy to respond to questions regarding my client as well.
Definitely appreciate that, and I think Senator Falscado has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Whitney Dameron. So you mentioned the curbside service. So how did that go? Do you just, in your opinion, did the transaction go smoothly when people were able to,
another bill, another time. I don't want to get off subject for the Mr. Chairman here committee, but I would say, from our perspective, I think, the restaurants and the people who took advantage of that that was a needed tool. It was very helpful to them. I do represent a number of retailers myself. They have legislation that would allow them to take it from the curbside to the home through delivery. We don't oppose that, and that may be a hearing for another day. But thank you. And I also would like to say in closing, we appreciate the efforts of the director. She was very helpful in working with the industry to help us put this bill together. And if I've misstated anything, I defer to her, and whatever she says is correct. So, thank you.
Further questions? Thank you for being here today. Next on the order of proponents would be an attorney for the Law LLC, Mr. Tuck Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am appearing here as a Duncan lawyer, and I'm so glad that I'm sorry that my mother is dead and not available to hear the fine things that Mr. Dameron said. I don't think she would believe them, but I'm sorry. But I am glad that on YouTube this is being recorded, and now I'm going to get that snippet and it's going to go into my website. And when people see it, they're going to, so anyway. All right. This bill, from my perspective, is 100% technical because it's doing nothing more than saying in Kansas law what is lawful under federal law. But Kansas liquor statutes, and actually in all of the states, liquor statutes start out with the proposition you can't do anything unless we tell you you can do it. And that's different than any other statute we have. Everything else we do, we say, thou shalt not, like those 10 amendments, or, commandments. But in the liquor, it's not that way. It's, you can't do anything. It's all prohibited unless we permit you. And so that was the twix in between. The director found herself in. She did have this big meeting. I got nominated to draft it. And so what we're doing is simply saying, and the statute refers to those specific sections of federal law as of a given date. So there's no question whatsoever in the future. If you go back and look at the federal law as of this date, you're going to know what these permissions are. And that's great for our Kansas farm wineries. Then Mr. Federico's clients purchased the old tall grass operation out in Manhattan, and I understand, and they have somebody here to talk about what they're doing, but they're canning coffee. Canning wine is the new frontier. I mean, there's so much canned wine out there, it's incredible. And so the question was, why not in Kansas? Why not let us take this? Well, the federal law allows for that. So what they will have to do is get a distilled spirits permit from the feds. And once they get that, they will be allowed to then get a Kansas packaging warehousing permit and import those wines, do the canning, and send it back to the manufacturer. So that's what this bill does. I know it's the 9,752nd amendment to the farm winery law since 1986, but these are good amendments. So I may have exaggerated there.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Are there any questions? Yes, Senator Longbottom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Duncan, are you familiar with the bill that is going around? I believe it's in Commerce Committee called Name, Image, and Likeness.
No, is that the one that I get to now sell my likeness and name?
Well, it's a way to reimburse athletes.
Oh, I am familiar with that,
their
yes.
image and likeness in college. Do you think that you would be supportive of a bill that allowed legislators into that bill so that when you use us on your website and TV commercials and whatever, we can get a little piece of that action?
I would be glad to give you a royalty, Senator, not a problem. Anything that, when the pond gets bigger, all boats float.
I'm going to call this meeting back to order. And let's stay on subject, please. Thank you. Next on the proponents, we'll have Mr. Phil Bradley and Farm Winery Association. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This is the first time I've appeared before this committee this year. Generally, I'm regular, and you get tired of seeing me. Perhaps not as tired as the internationally well-known attorney who I think has something on the Mars lander, so he's known, intergalactically. Thank you for allowing me to be here. I need to introduce, I have an actual rare winemaker in the back over here, this couple over on this side, that are the Bergrens. They run KC Wine Co. They're winemakers. If you have any questions for actual wine makers and grape growers, there they are. We'd like to voice our unanimous and enthusiastic support for this. Everything that the people said previously is true about the bill. About individuals, I will not comment on. Even before the pandemic, it was hard to acquire all the elements to make those wonderful nectars that we enjoy of the Kansas wines. And a winemaker might find himself having this grape juice and this grape juice and this, but he really needed something else. And according to what the Kansas law allowed, he couldn't just go get it from somebody else. Not in that format. He could get it in the grapes, but he couldn't get it once it had started down the process. So this is wonderful for that. It's going to allow them to make theirs better. It's going to allow them, if they have extra grapes of a type that they're not using for bottling this year, they can allow someone else to use to blend for things. It's a wonderful law, or a wonderful adaptation of the law to agree with what's going on all over the country. So we thank you for that. We also think it's a wonderful addition to add in the canning and bottling. As many of you know, I also represent the craft brewers in the state, and we were very sad to see Tallgrass leave, but we're excited about the possibility of that beautiful plant being used for another activity. For many, many years, I've stood before many of you here and talked about the need for canning and bottling resources. And we had talked with some of you, possibly on a truck, portable, that would go from winery to winery or brewery to brewery, because it is extremely expensive to put in a canning and bottling line. So this is a wonderful option that's going to allow many of our small vendors to do a great job. In my testimony, I thank the aforementioned people, including the director. This is the way that I love that law gets made, when everybody gets together and we put it all down there. I would also like to mention one other thing that was mentioned on that call that you all were not a part of, that seemed to have consensus at the time. And if there comes a time during a bill this year that you find it might be possible, I'd ask for your support for it. And that is wineries selling CMB. In another bill that's coming up today that I did not sign up to testify for, trying to be wary of your time elements, you're talking about CMB sales, and you're going to allow another licensee to sell CMB sales. So if that type of thing is something you're interested in, we would appreciate it. And I will answer questions anytime.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you for your time today. Next on the proponents, we have Jennifer Suk on behalf of Bev Hub LLC, and she's on remotely. Jennifer?
Good morning, committee. Thank you for the opportunity to be heard today on behalf of my client, Bev Hub. We also are represented by John Federico, so he and I are available for any comments following some information. So I represent the famous company, after lots of talk about us, who has purchased the Tallgrass Brewing Facility in Manhattan, Kansas. A little background on Bev Hub. Bev Hub was a created company and has a current operating warehouse and canning line in Wichita, Kansas. It was created for boutique coffees to be canned so they could enter the market space in your supermarket. We have clients such as Rockstar and Scooters, to name a few, and smaller boutique coffees. So as we develop relationships through that Kansas facility, with our ownership being from Kansas as well, there was an obvious demand for increased production for coffees, waters, and other boutique type of drink beverages from international and national brands that are household names. And so the Tallgrass factory came available, and we purchased it, and are currently fully investing about $30 million into a full high-speed, very fancy canning line in Manhattan, Kansas. It will be operational in April, rolling out its first cans and products for the marketplace. As we have been meeting with clients, it became a very hot topic to allow us to can and co-pack for seltzer waters, alcoholic seltzer waters, also coffees that contain alcohol, and other potential co-packing opportunities. So as Tuck had mentioned, what is allowed under federal law is not currently allowed under Kansas law, and we would like the opportunity to be able to increase our production. We had anticipated it being fully online in about 4 years, running all three shifts with approximately 40 skilled employees. And this would allow us to be pretty much full capacity within year 1 and 2, and producing for household name beverage companies. So we would like to bring this business to Kansas. It's a great opportunity and growth and economic development for Kansas and the Manhattan area. And I'm here for any questions that need to be answered.
Thank you, Jennifer. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. We do have a neutral testimony. Again, Director Beavers, the ABC. Director Beavers, are you on?
I am. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Debbie Beavers, and I'm the director of ABC. And thank you for the opportunity to testify neutral on this bill. ABC did become aware of some practices for farm wineries that were not authorized in current law, as Whitney had described previously. So I asked for issues from the farm wineries, compiled all that, did facilitate a very large online meeting, which wasn't perfect or ideal, but the inability to meet in person was not there. So anyway, the first section of this bill is a result of that discussion, and it's an attempt to align Kansas law with federal law so that wineries can do the things that they need to do to make their wine. Section 2, with the packaging and warehousing facility permit, I believe there's probably a couple of technical things that need to happen. If a Kansas manufacturer was going to be able to utilize this service, there'd have to be something added to KSA 41-305 to allow them to transfer their alcohol to the packaging warehousing facility. And the way the bill's written, it would exclude our farm wineries, microbreweries, and microdistilleries from utilizing the packaging service because a manufacturer specifically does not include a microbrewery, microdistillery, or farm winery. So I think that it might be worth considering adding that in as well. And with that, I will be happy to answer any questions that you have at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions for the director? Seeing none, thank you very much, and we'll see you again shortly. I failed to ask in the previous bill if there's any opponents, but I'm going to ask for opponents for Senate Bill 253. Are there any opponents that would like to testify? Now, I'm going to reopen the hearing for Senate Bill 252 and ask if there are any opponents for Senate Bill 252. Seeing none, we're going to close both 252 and 253. And let's move on to Senate Bill 254. And this bill authorizes certain licensees under the Kansas Liquor Control Act and Club and Drinking Establishment Act to sell and serve cereal malt beverages. And we have a staff briefing. Jason, are you on?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Senate Bill 254 would expand the categories of liquor licensees who could sell cereal malt beverage. As members of the committee may recall, back in 2019, legislation went into effect to allow the sale of beer with an alcohol content of not more than 6% alcohol by volume by CB retailers. Along with that act was also the authority for retail liquor stores to sell cereal malt beverage along with their regular alcoholic liquor products. Senate Bill 254 would extend that policy by allowing other alcoholic liquor licensees under the Club and Drinking Establishment Act to also sell cereal malt beverages on their premises. The Club and Drinking Establishment Act basically licenses clubs and restaurants, bars, caterers, and public venues to sell alcoholic liquor by the drink for consumption on licensed premises. And so Senate Bill 254 amends various statutes throughout that act to allow for the sale of cereal malt beverage by those licensees. There are also a number of amendments to the statutes governing temporary permit holders. These are entities that obtain a temporary permit to sell alcoholic liquor at a specific location for a short duration of time. The bill would allow those permit holders to sell cereal malt beverage as well. And then there was a law passed in 2017 allowing consumption of alcoholic liquor in common consumption areas established by a municipality. And the bill would also allow the consumption of cereal malt beverage in those common consumption areas. Finally, the bill amends one liquor control statute, 41-308, on liquor retailers to allow them to sell and deliver cereal malt beverages and beer containing not more than 6% alcohol by volume to cereal malt beverage retailers for consumption on their premises. So they're under current law, they're not allowed to sell or deliver those products to C&B retailers who are licensed under the C&B Act. Senate Bill 254 would allow such sale and delivery to them. Retailers currently sell alcoholic liquor to clubs and drinking establishments under current law. So this is just an extension to CMB. The bill going into effect on July 1st of this year if it is enacted, and I'd be happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Jason, questions? Senator Falscadeau.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jason, so what is the major difference? You're saying this legislation is to come in compliance with the federal level. So what is the major fix there or compliance there?
There's no issue with the federal law on Senate Bill 254. The main issue is back when we authorized C&B retailers to sell beer that had not more than 6% alcohol by volume. At the same time, we allowed liquor retailers to sell C&B out of their licensed premises. What Senate Bill 254 does is extend that policy of allowing C&B sales by traditional alcoholic liquor retailers to clubs and drinking establishments. So any entity that's licensed to sell alcoholic liquor by the drink would also be authorized to sell cereal malt beverage by the drink under Senate Bill 254. That's the primary policy piece in the bill.
Are there any other questions? Thank you, Jason. Our first proponent is Amy Campbell, Executive Director of Kansas. Welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, my name is Amy Campbell with the Kansas Association of Beverage Retailers. Jason has explained this bill pretty well, but let me just take you back a little bit. In 2017, the Kansas Legislature adopted a compromise legislation called the Beer Compromise. That went into effect in April of 2019, allowing grocery stores and convenience stores to sell up to 6% beer by volume. That was a big shift in our industry. We tried really hard to make sure that we got to all the itty bitty little parts of the Liquor Control Act and got them updated to fit with that change. But this, I hope, is our last technical adjustments to update our statutes. I'm not going to talk about the part relating to the clubs and drinking establishments. Jason can cover that. But there is a piece in here for retail liquor stores and for restaurants. This came to our attention specifically because a number of small family-owned restaurants that just have C&B on-premise licenses were coming to liquor stores trying to get small quantities of wholesale cereal malt beverage, and our statute doesn't allow us to sell to them. So this would update that and make sure that in our role, now not all liquor stores have a federal wholesale permit, but those who do are allowed to be the wholesaler for beer, wine, and spirits to the fourth tier of the industry. And this would then allow those cereal malt beverage on-premise restaurants to buy from their liquor store. That is our piece of this legislation. I would just provide a little bit of information to you. Since 2017, Kansas has lost 35 liquor stores. We knew that this would be a part of passing the beer law. We have been had a little bit of relief this year. It's been a very hard year for the bars and restaurants with the coronavirus pandemic and all of those limitations. That has had an unintended effect of benefiting liquor stores as people have bought their liquor at the liquor store to take home and drink. We do not expect that that will continue once people are able to move more freely and spend more time back in our entertainment venues. So I would just remind you that our liquor stores are still dealing with this transition. We appreciate your attention to this matter, and I would be very happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Our next proponent is Mr. Jason Watkins on behalf of the Kansas Beer Wholesalers Association. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jason Watkins on behalf of the Kansas Beer Wholesalers Association. Mr. Long did explain the bill quite well. There's some misconception out there that when we passed the quote strong beer bill that we got rid of CMB. we did not get rid of the legal definition of cereal malt beverage in the state of Kansas, unlike Oklahoma. They did, and then they had to have a long period of time to get folks licensed. When we made our change, we just said those folks that sell C&B, grocery and liquor stores, may now sell beer up to 6.8 by ABV, excuse me. That was great. The problem is what we have now are a whole bunch of low calorie, low alcohol content beers that, because we didn't get rid of our C&B definition, qualify as C&B. And so if you like a Mick Ultra Gold, I see somebody shaking their head that they do. She cannot go to Old Chicago right now and get a Mick Ultra Gold. She can get it at the grocery store. She can get it at the liquor store. She could go to a, quote, 3-2 bar, which there's not very many of those left, and get it, but she could not go to Old Chicago. This bill, at least the portion that we're bringing to you, simply updates that, and we think that's a good move. As much as we can encourage folks to drink lower alcohol content, lower calorie content, the better that we are, the better off we all are. We would request one amendment, and that is because this is creating confusion in the marketplace. Really, nobody knew this was an issue until an ABC agent was training a new agent and went into a bar that had multiple licenses, and he said to that agent, see, this is C&B over here. If this was in a regular bar, this would be illegal. None of us really knew that. We talked to the director, figured out that was the case, but because it is creating some confusion in the marketplace, and I talked to the director about this last year, we would ask that this be in effect upon publication in the register instead of in the statute book. Because right now, I'm sure it's none of our members, but there are folks that are not in compliance. And if an agent went in, they could get fined. And again, this is a very small technical issue. So, and I think the director's going to testify, and if she's agreeable, we would make that request. And I'm happy to stand for questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Jason, if we go ahead and work this bill, would you be willing to bring that amendment?
Certainly. Yep.
Thank you.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman.
Seeing no further questions, we'll move on to our next proponent, Mr. Scott Snyder, Kansas Restaurant and Hospitality Association. Morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Scott Schneider with the Kansas Restaurant and Hospitality Association. We think this bill is a good bill. It solves a problem that does exist in a substantial way. But what I'd also like to talk about, and I appreciate the chair's willingness to have me talk a little bit about this, is a bill that has passed a few times. It is actual law. It passed in HB 2016 in the special session, Senate Bill 14 earlier this year. It's a little bit like Groundhog Day for me because I keep passing this bill and I can't quite get it into statute permanently. It does expire because of what the Judiciary Committees did March 31st. So we're going to have a disruption if we can't figure out how to take that date off and extend it permanently. And it is something that, as attitudes and business behaviors have changed, has actually worked well. I think the reports that I've gotten back from the industry members value that highly. And as you work alcohol bills, I would encourage you to be mindful of the timing of this, because it sure feels like we're running out of time. And with that, I'd stand for any questions if you had any.
Are there any questions? I am assuming you will be bringing this amendment if we work the bill.
As many times as I possibly can, yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. That is all of our proponents for this bill. We do have a neutral written, and that is Director Debbie Beavers with the ABC, and that is in your packet. Is there any other information that needs to be shared on Senate Bill 254? Seeing none, we're going to close Senate Bill 254 and open Senate Bill number 2. And this is allowing consumption of beer and wine on the Kansas State Fairgrounds and crediting a portion of the money collected from the liquor enforcement tax to the State Fair Capital Improvement Fund. Staff briefing on that. Jason, do you have a briefing?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Senate Bill 2 makes amendments to current law regarding the sale and consumption of alcoholic liquor on the premises of the state fairgrounds. Under current law, we have a statute 41-719 that generally prohibits consumption of alcoholic liquor on public property, but includes an exception for the state fairgrounds. Under that current law, patrons at the state fair can purchase and consume beer and wine on the leased premises of a temporary permit holder who is operating at the state fair. And those permit holders have leases with the state fair board to operate at the state fair. And currently the patron can purchase the beer or wine at that permit holder and then consume it within the leased premises that is designated for that permit holder. Senate Bill 2 would allow the State Fair Board to designate a more expansive area within the state fairgrounds that would go beyond the permit holder's leased area and allow patrons who purchase wine and beer at a permit holder location to then carry and consume that beer or wine within that broader designated area of the state fairgrounds. The boundaries of that area must be marked with a three-dimensional barrier, and also there must be clear signage, a posted map, or other means for patrons to reasonably identify the designated area where beer and wine can be carried and consumed. Senate Bill 2 then, as you mentioned, also makes amendments with respect to the alcoholic liquor enforcement taxes. Basically the portion of the tax revenue derived from sales on the state fairgrounds would go to the State Fair Capital Improvements Fund. Under the bill, it would take 70% of the tax revenue from both the 8% retail sale enforcement tax and the 10% drink sale enforcement tax and credit that to the State Fair Capital Improvements Fund. The state would retain 30% of the tax revenue from such sales. There is a caveat that funding provision expires if the state fair is ever relocated to a location that is outside the city limits of Hutchinson, Kansas. The bill will go into effect on July 1st of this year if enacted, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions of Jason? Seeing none, thank you, Jason. Our first proponent is Ed Berger, who is the interim general manager of the Kansas State Fair Board.
Good morning, Chairman Alley and members of the
Morning.
committee. I'm Ed Berger. I serve as interim general manager for the appreciate the opportunity to provide testimony in support of Senate Bill 2. As you know, it's a follow-up on Senate Bill 408 from last year that didn't have a chance to go through the entire process. Basically, Jason did a great job explaining the bill. It would allow people who make a purchase of an alcoholic beverage to take that out of a facility and take it on to the fairgrounds. The Kansas State Fair Board would designate an area where that consumption could take place. I would imagine if this bill is approved and signed into law, that the Kansas State Fair Board would approach this rather gingerly and have a restricted area for consumption and see how it goes from that point forward. It is estimated that this would increase the sale of alcoholic products by about 20%. The funding portion is extremely important. The 70% of that alcohol tax would go to the Capital Improvement Fund, and the balance would go to the state general fund. It's basically a win-win proposition. Has the possibility for enhancing the experience of the fairgoer and expanding revenue and tax collections. It is permissive only. The Kansas State Fair Board would have to take action designating the area on the grounds where this consumption could take place. and moving forward. So with that, I might mention that this model is something that is done in other states and has been done very successfully. And they haven't had any incidents of increased incidence of underage consumption. That certainly was a concern of mine and many of our Fair Board members as well, but other states have not had that experience. So with that, I would stand for questions.
Thank you. Is there questions concerning this? As we talked earlier this morning, if this bill passes, you will be identifying an area and getting that out, and will this be ready for our state fair this fall?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure that we can implement it this fall yet. Would have to take quite a bit of work on the part of the people at the state fair. We might try a very limited area on the fairgrounds for implementation, but it would be very limited, just to see what the advantages and what the pitfalls are. So we're going to approach this very gingerly.
Thank you very much. We have another question, Senator Clues.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just curious, will the vendors who are selling, will the grounds where they can drink be close to the vendors or away from quite a bit?
Thank you. The grounds will, by necessity, be close to where the point of sale is. Certainly, by very nature, that wouldn't really work for it to be very far from that. I guess if I'm envisioning how it might be enacted, I would strongly oppose any kind of consumption of alcohol within the buildings we have on the fairgrounds. Again, it would be a very limited area.
One
more question? Yes.
One follow-up question then. So do you see that this would increase the amount of vendors who sell then?
I'm not sure about that. Right now, we have a limited number of vendors selling on fairgrounds. Certainly, they can make application to sell on the fairgrounds, but I wouldn't necessarily anticipate the number going up dramatically. Again, I think it's permissive legislation. So after we have it enacted for a while and in place, well, I think we'll probably see perhaps some interest in increased vendors on the fairgrounds.
Further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Is anybody here that'd like to testify as a neutral or an opponent? Seeing none, thank you. And this will close hearing on Senate Bill number 2. And with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.